What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We are here today to review WWE Money in the Bank 2024. We're going to take a look at a couple of the key moments from the press conference that happened immediately after the PLE itself. And then we're going to take a look at the new pay-per-view, a throwback to yesteryears that they are bringing back in October. That's going to be held in Atlanta, Georgia, which I'm super stoked about. Atlanta is about maybe like a 6-hour drive from me here in Orlando, give or take an hour or so. And I've been looking for an excuse to go up there, so I'm going to definitely try to make that a stopping point within um the next year, right? Because they announced that it's going to be on October 5th, so we're going to take a look at some details in regards to that. But as always, thank you guys so much for checking out the show. If you're watching here on YouTube, thank you so much for doing so. Feel free to subscribe and like the show if you feel so inclined. Leave comments. I am kind of trying very hard not to laugh at myself because it is after July 4th, obviously. With me doing a review show with a pay-per-view that happened on July 6th. I believe today is, what is today's date? Doesn't matter. I think it's like the 7th or the 8th. But I am, if you're watching here on YouTube, I am burnt to a crisp. And it just tickles me because I am just that person that I cannot go outside or go to the beach specifically. But even just driving, sometimes my arms get tanned and burned. But the sun just doesn't like me, man. I put on a shit ton of sunscreen and I am still burned to a crisp. I look ridiculous. I have ridiculous tan lines because of the shorts I was wearing. So it's just a hot mess over here. So thank you guys so much for, if you're watching and you turn on the show and you can't bear to watch because of the sight of myself today, I truly get it. And maybe give me about a week or so to heal up or whatever. But I couldn't let time go by without talking about Money in the Bank, and then of course the big news that came out of the pay-per-view itself, some news and follow-up that we got from the press conference itself regarding, of course, John Cena. It's no surprise or hidden secret at this point, making his retirement announcement at the pay-per-view itself, PLE itself, and then commenting and giving us a little bit more details and a little bit more insight on the whereabouts of where the last match could possibly take place. Is it going to be at WrestleMania? Things like that. So we'll get into all that. But again, like I was saying earlier, thank you guys for watching the show. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at @kickashpodcast_. You can follow me personally at ASHMANNS. And if you're new here, thank you so much for checking out the show. I truly appreciate it. Still getting a hang with things and working on some other things and getting some other guests here on the show, which could be cool. So be on the lookout for that. But again, I'm not going to waste too much time here. We're going to dive right into the pay-per-view itself, PLE itself. I was doing so well at that for the longest time, but of course, Money in the Bank this year was held in Toronto, Ontario, Canada at the Scotiabank Arena. Of course, was held on July 6, 2024. And I love, again, these Saturday pay-per-views. I will just always praise and put that over whenever I can because it's such a better vibe too. It's, especially if you're off on the weekends, which I am, well, depending on my part-time. um, Sometimes I have to work on Saturdays unless I request off. I always have to work on Saturdays, but at least in my full time I'm off. In my part time's pretty simple and chill. So if you're someone like me and are able to kind of chill, or and like I said, I was off this past weekend and enjoy a Saturday pay-per-view, it's such a different feeling because then you wake up Sunday and like, man, I have a whole nother day to do whatever I need to get done, this, that, and the third, and just get ready for the work week ahead and not have to worry about cramming everything in during the day itself, getting back and especially if you're gonna have like a pay-per-view or a PLE watch party, having friends over, cooking, grilling, things like that. So and especially with it being a holiday weekend. So I know a lot of people ended up doing that. So yeah, it's just I just love Saturday pay-per-views. I'm not going to get into the pre-show because I myself did not watch it because I was doing other things during that time, and I was in a different time zone, which I didn't even put two and two together. It was my first time going to Pensacola, and I was just dumbfounded. I literally thought something happened to my phone time-wise, and I was like, oh shit, wait, there's different time zones here in Florida. But that being said, that's another reason why I didn't watch the pre-show because I thought, oh, I'm still good. I still have an hour left, but I was actually an hour behind. So getting into the main card here, we of course had the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. We had Jey Uso facing off against Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Chad Gable, LA Knight, Drew McIntyre in your opener, which I thought was a really good sign, and I like that they put them in on first. Again, it kind of makes sense with seeing who the winner ended up being, and then what happened later on in the heavyweight championship match, it all kind of lines up. So no real surprise there when you kind of look at the lay of the land going forward. But this match was pretty solid. Nothing crazy, honestly, that stood out to me. Excuse me, guys. I had to get a quick drink of the ginger ale. Again, Canada Dry. Shout out if you need a sponsor. If you're looking to get into the wrestling, uh, little wrestling sphere, hit me up. I drink too much of ginger ale. But yeah, so like I was saying, nothing really stood out to me too much in this in the men's Money in the Bank match. To be honest with you, the winner was pretty predictable. And again, I'm one of those people that's not a bad thing. That's actually sometimes a good thing. And this was a situation where it was a good thing. I did kind of wonder, were they going to pull the trigger and maybe have Jay Uso win the Money in the Bank briefcase and have Drew and Punk continue their story, and then Drew end up getting back to the WWE or the World Heavyweight Championship a different route. But I liked how they ended up getting there. I liked it, but we're gonna obviously talk about the whole Punk interference. I may even have a surprising take since obviously I'm a very very big CM Punk fan myself. But it has some interesting or just different takes, I guess, than maybe some of the usual CM Punk fans have. So we'll definitely be getting into that. With this one too, to me, then I guess one thing that stood out, not in the negative situation or in the negative regard rather, but it was LA Knight, and man, just I guess the only bad thing about LA Knight being so popular, what was it, a year ago, a little over a year ago at this point, is just how unfortunate the timing of it was. Like if that would have happened a year prior, maybe 2 years prior, I think Dude would have been money. Like he would have been positioned a lot differently. And it's just frustrating to me. Not that I, of course, thought that he was going to win the briefcase last or on Saturday or anything like that, but it's just like, man, like the reactions he was getting, and just the superstar vibe and feeling that he just exudes and still does. It's and again, not a knock on him. It's just literally WWE is kind of what we were saying about AEW a couple years ago, what in 2021. An embarrassment of riches. Who said that at first? Was it, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Wade. I'm not sure exactly. But it's just so fitting. And WWE is in this situation right now. They have an embarrassment of riches, meaning that they have such a stacked and loaded roster and such a talented roster. And it just feels like even if some of the storylines and the outcomes and the things are what we personally would do, and I'm gonna reference one, not to, I think the very next match, they're still hitting, man. Like they're still out there vibing, and it's on a different level. Even if you don't want to admit it and you hate being cliche like I do, you can't not acknowledge the fact that LA Knight was hitting and just cooking not too long ago, and he's still shining, right? Like he's still a big deal, but he's just it could have been a different situation if we were going into this maybe 2 years ago. Like I was saying, like I think the money or the favorites could have been a little bit more in LA Knight's area and on LA Knight's side. But maybe it's just a matter of holding on to him and just kind of keeping him on the back burner and just keeping him hot, and especially if he shows that he can maintain that popularity, that they can pull the trigger on him in 6, 8, 9, 10 months from now. But it just kind of makes you nervous, and I kind of feel for him, because he was just like I said, he was cooking, man. He was out there doing his thing, and it's just literally a situation of it just got way too crowded on the roster, and he was just wrong place at the wrong time in a way. But it's just one of those weird and interesting situations. But again, I mean, shit. Like I'm sure he ain't mad, right? Like I'm sure he obviously would want to be in the main event, but I'm probably not too out there to be certain that he is making pretty decent merchandise checks. He's probably making a good paycheck month. So yeah, like dude's out there thriving. I'm happy for him, but I kind of feel for him too. Chad Gable again, like I couldn't believe that this was his first ladder match. And I'm pretty certain that's what I heard. And thinking back, and I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I don't recall, but it was just kind of crazy to me. Like I just never even put that, thought two and two together. But I think, man, like again, I think and I wish that they would have kept him out a little bit longer after being attacked by the Wyatt Six. But I guess if you're not going to and you're just gonna bring him back, have him involved in a match like this and let him shine. and I think he and Andrade got a good amount of time, you know, and I think especially there's just something with Chad too, man. Like I'm just sitting here thinking about him, and just something about Chad just it just obviously, right? Like I'm not gonna be pretend to be the first person to say this, but that Kurt Angle aspect, man, like there's just something there that if one more layer and one more characteristic or just something else can be just unlocked out of him, like man, like I just really think that he could be the next like truly Kurt Angle-esque, right? And actually be heavyweight champion, especially now that we have two titles on each roster and you have your fighting champion and Cody Rhodes on SmackDown and you have a fighting champion. Say what you want about Damian Priest on Raw. And he's not one of those heels that like runs and is like a chicken shit heel and doesn't want to defend the title. Like no, like he's actively gone out there multiple times to say he wants to defend his title. So I think you could possibly make a good argument in the future for a Chad Gable title shot. If I'm not going to say pull the trigger because we have to see where we're at that time and how heavy the build has been, but man, like just the reactions that he gets too. Just something different about that guy. But of course, no shocker here that Drew McIntyre ended up winning the match itself. We'll obviously be talking about him a little bit later on, so I'm not going to waste too much time here. But the next matchup that I was referencing not too long ago, of course, is Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn going in as your defending champion. This was a kick-ass match. I fucking love this match. I actually want to go back. I'm gonna throw it on. I gotta catch up on some laundry. Do a lot of things. Aloe myself. And just get ready for my work week tomorrow. Thankfully, I'm just one of those people like I have my vacation and then I need to take at least one extra day off to collect myself and just be by myself and just do shit that I need to get done. Not have to worry about anything else, and then I'll start fresh the next day. So that's me, you know, like I'll grind the rest of the days and the rest of my weeks to catch up on it, but whatever in me, man, whenever I go on vacation, I need that buffer day. So that obviously that's why I was referencing. I'm gonna throw this on in a little bit here, but man, like this match was just so kick ass. Like I really enjoyed this match. I think that Braun Breaker really had a good shining, and I don't want to say a breakout match here, but because I don't know if that's too strong, but man, like this dude, there's just something about him, and he is intimidating. Like when he's the start of the match and just the stares that he was giving, and I loved everything about his demeanor, his mannerisms. He wasn't being too obnoxious with like the barking or anything else like that. Like it was everything was timed and placed, and his expressions, it was just so well done, and I was just so impressed. Like I for whatever reason, his match and especially the beginning parts of the match just really stood out to me. So shout out to him for that. And again, like I didn't do a prediction show on this one just with scheduling it with everything last week and driving. But I my prediction was that Braun was gonna win. And I still don't know how I feel about Sammy winning. I did see, I think it was prior to the press conference starting, they did a little behind the scenes, or backstage interview with Sammy. And he was talking about, you know, like pretty much, and I loved what he said about Braun, the way he put him over and how he wasn't going into it underestimating Braun, but he still thinks that he didn't take him as seriously as he should have going into it. And I loved the wording and I just loved how he phrased it. So definitely go out of your way to check that out if you have a couple minutes. It's probably somewhere on Twitter. It's probably the easiest place, or maybe YouTube itself. But towards the end, Sammy was saying, you know, like he's done and gone through, excuse me, all these matches and had all these victories and things like that, and even in his hometown. But still, he's sometimes viewed and he still heard people cheering for Braun out there and a few people, you know, doubting him. And he's just like, what do I have to do to prove people wrong? And he didn't take like a bad guy turn or anything like that. But it was just like a more stern side of Sammy, and I really enjoy that. So definitely check that out if you can. Like I said, it's probably maybe easier on Twitter to find because you can probably search Sammy and then he's probably tagged in it. Yeah, but because to be honest, I love YouTube, but I'm still not great with YouTube. um, but I don't know how I truly feel, and I'm gonna wait and see how this one plays out and to see the next immediate route for Braun Breaker. Obviously, there's a few stories going on with him. Sheamus is involved. You can Ludwig Kaiser's involved. So maybe they're setting up a fatal four-way at SummerSlam. But to me, I feel like it'd be more impactful and just hit heavier having Braun win his first singles championship on the main roster in a singles match and in a match similar to this one against the Sami Zayn. So while I can kind of see them wanting to get obviously Sheamus on the card, but maybe even Ludwig Kaiser on there as well for SummerSlam, I wouldn't be surprised to see them run this back, to be honest with you. So it's TBD on that. But man, like I really was surprised, and I was kind of bummed, that Braun lost. There's just something about him, like I was saying, and the dude has the it factor, right? And his athleticism obviously is just fucking crazy. But I really wish that they would change his name though too. I wish that they would just go like Braun Ricksteiner or whatever you want to do, or just Braun Steiner if you can do that. Because the Breaker, like if you're really gonna like catapult this guy, maybe you can do that once he wins the championship. Have his first promo out, like for instance, like if he, let's say he was at SummerSlam, right? Like his first promo on that following Raw, come out there and saying like, I'm the real deal. I told you guys, and by the way, like my name is Braun, whatever. Show me the respect I deserve, something to that effect, and then just go from there. And whether you want to keep him as a heel or a baby face, that's TBD as well, depending on the lay of the land at that point, whenever that may be. But yeah, man, like obviously it's not one of those situations where like, oh, like they didn't pull the trigger now, like he's just a lost cause, because that's definitely not the case. He didn't get buried or anything crazy like that. But I don't know. I think it just would have hit even heavier in this situation for Braun to win and to defeat Sammy in Canada. Like I know obviously Sammy's from Montreal, but Canada's still Canada, like, and I don't really know, but I hear that like your Toronto people don't really get along with Montreal, or there's like, or not that they don't get along, but like there's like competition. I don't really know. Maybe if I have any Canadian viewers and listeners out there, feel free to let me know on Twitter at ASHMANNS, or the show's Twitter page at Kickash Podcast _, or if you're watching on Twitter, drop it in the comments. I was actually thinking about that earlier. I was listening to something completely unrelated. But I was thinking about that. Like, I don't know the beef there. I don't know if that's true, or if it's just us Americans making shit up. Because y'all are so peaceful and great up there and actually care about your citizens. And here we are, regardless of, I'm not going to get political, obviously, but regardless of what side of the fence you lie on, it's just not looking good for us. And we're just, yeah, it's just looking kind of grim out there for us here in US of A. So moving on though, the next matchup that we had was actually, this is actually where we had our big surprise and our big announcement, which is dominating everything right now. And a lot of like Sports Center, ESPN, a lot of other outlets picked it up as well. We had Trish Stratus, not Trish Stratus, but Trish Stratus came out on the stage and announced that she took a stroll down memory lane, and for a moment rather, and before she was, or while she was doing that rather, I can't talk. She at one point was announced as a mystery partner for a certain someone, and silence came about. No one recalled apparently who she was referring to, and then John Cena's music hit, and everyone of course lost their mind. It was pretty obvious when he came out, if you just see his big red shirt, that the front of it says "The last time is now." John Cena's farewell, and then the back of it had a big ass fucking door, like literally just like almost like a, not a cartoon door, but like a kid's door on the back of it, and it said, "After this, you can't see me." And it's just like, bro, like, okay, well, we know what you're out here for. No surprise. So he goes on to say, "Tonight, I officially announced my retirement from WWE." Which obviously, if you know Cena, he's not meaning it right now. Nothing in there. But he said he wanted to do in Canada because whether WWE is hot or cold, rather, Canadians always show up, and the fans actually chanted for Cena, which is still just kind of funny. Just thinking back on all of his runs and some of his reactions in Toronto, it's just funny. He says that the farewell doesn't end tonight. He spoke about Raw debuting on Netflix in January, and that he would be there, which is, I'm very excited for it to be on Netflix. It's literally the last show between that and AEW that I only have Sling for. I literally watch nothing else on Sling, so that'd be even though I love Swing, so shout out to Sling. Good, if you like the sponsor, I love you guys. But I love Sling. I cut the cable years ago when I don't even remember when, but so Sling is great if you're able to stream. Obviously, it's a great option, so check that out. But it's like $45 that I can save, so that would be great. And it's as opposed to just paying for Netflix, which I already have for no reason because Netflix is hot or cold itself lately. My little rant there. Sorry about that, but Cena continue. Oh, but I was saying before I went on in my little rant there, Cena mentioned that they're going on Netflix, and I'm super excited for that because I'm just so fucking tired of all the bleeps and just the cutouts and the mutes on the TV show and the blackouts. That I'm pretty sure it's Fox. USA doesn't isn't as bad, but Fox is just fucking ridiculous. And I know obviously Fox is going to be moving to USA, so that should at least get a little bit better. And they're not the ones moving to Netflix, but it just reminded me of that. But moving on, Cena announced that the 2025 Royal Rumble will be his last. So I'm so sorry, Dan, if he ends up winning. My friend Dan just fucking hates Cena, and I love it. He said the 2025 Elimination Chamber will be his last, and he referenced that he likes that the Elimination Chamber has some substance and some meaning to it as well. And that's different, obviously, than the past, right? A lot of times he would go and just have random elimination chamber matches for no reason, and it's like, why have the elimination chamber in the build to WrestleMania and not have it impact WrestleMania? So a lot of us had always been advocating for the chamber to mean something, and even a few years ago they had a couple years ago rather they had changed that. So with him referencing the elimination chamber, that was kind of like a okay moment for me, because I don't necessarily see Cena winning the Royal Rumble. I don't recall offhand how many times he's won the Rumble, but I know obviously he's won, I think maybe twice, because I think Cody was the first time to for the first wrestler to win it 3 times since Stone Cold. So I think that's the case. But yeah, I don't know. Like I with him referencing this the Elimination Chamber, I could see him winning the chamber, and if they're truly serious about him going for the title for a 17th time, it would be very interesting to see what they end up doing with John Cena. I had a brain fart there. With John Cena and potentially Cody Rhodes. If you watch the press conference, which I said we'll kind of reference later, but I think I may just mix in some things now that we're talking about Cena, because that was the main thing for the press conference, anyways, for me. But he had referenced that prior or contrary to the way he kind of alluded in his promo in the ring regarding the retirement, WrestleMania 25 is not his final wrestling match. He's not retiring at WrestleMania. He's retiring sometime in 2025. And he even referenced the Money in the Bank. I don't recall if he referenced SummerSlam of next year offhand, but he definitely referenced time wrestling in WWE next year after WrestleMania. So obviously, we don't have to worry about him retiring there, so it's not going to be that heavy of a match. But he also mentioned in the press conference, which was very kind of intriguing to me, which kind of ties in my Cody Rhodes point here, that he was very appreciative of WWE fitting him into their their world, and he referenced how they're on fire right now and how they have a lot of things going, and that they really carved out a vision, and I'm sure they both collaborated on a vision, and that's what Triple H, I'm pretty sure, referenced later on as well. Something to the effect of they are pretty much both accumulating on an idea, on a mutual idea, and laying out a foundation for most likely the next year. It's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up wanting to retire. I'm part of me wonders if he was going to do it at Survivor Series, but since it's not going to be at WrestleMania, and he said it's going to be in 2025, I Survivor Series would be the last biggest show, unless you're going to do it at SummerSlam, which I could see as well, because SummerSlam was always a go-to pay-per-view for Cena's in the later years. So I'm very intrigued by that. I'm very intrigued to see if we end up finding or getting any type of indication on when the final match or the final pay-per-view it's going to be, because I'm sure he's not going to just retire in a random episode of SmackDown, which now that I think about it, maybe he will, since he, debuted the Ruthless Aggression and all that shit. Maybe he would want to, but I don't know. Like, to me, that would be kind of odd. I could see him absolutely like hyping up the last SmackDown that he's going to be on, but not having his last match on a SmackDown. Is my point. But with him referencing WWE, like I was saying, squeezing him into their schedule for the next year plus potentially, if is that going to change any plans with The Rock and the Bloodline and Cody Rhodes, and how that was falling out and coming to fruition, and if that's going to be kind of put on the back burner, and if The Rock is going to kind of taste and feel a little bit of his own medicine from last year, or what potentially could have been his own medicine too. So in that sense, in regards to Cody Rhodes, because I think if with Cena mentioning the Elimination Chamber and mentioning the fact that now it has meaning, again, I don't see him winning the Rumble, and I don't think he should. I could see him possibly winning the Elimination Chamber because he is obviously that type of character that wants to fight, and he even said it. He wants to start from the bottom and work his way up to earning a shot at the title if that's what the road is going to lead to. So I could see him definitely starting that road. I think he mentioned maybe December, January, if he start, and that's just kind of crazy. Like I would say probably sometime in December, or maybe he starts whenever that first Raw is going to be on Netflix. Maybe that's his starting point, and he goes from there, which kind of makes more sense now that I'm thinking about it. But I could see him wanting to kind of run the tangent in the Elimination Chamber and be one of the first two guys to start out the match and then go from start to finish. And yeah, so I could definitely see him winning that because with how they have done it in the past, the Elimination Chamber winner can vie for a shot at the title. So I could definitely see them doing that, and whether he does that at WrestleMania and wins his 17th title, because imagine that. Imagine if he goes to WrestleMania, and even if he doesn't face off against Cody Rhodes, what if he decides to go after the World Heavyweight Championship, since that's a different incarnation of it, and technically he hasn't won that championship. So that could be a first time for him, and obviously the 17th time as a whole as a world champion, which would be historic in a couple ways right there. He's elevating a different wrestler completely because, I mean, I don't think it's going to be Damian Priest at that point, but if it's a Seth Rollins or a Braun Breaker at that point, maybe Braun somehow makes his way to the title prior to. It's going to be a very interesting, however many months, July, what, 8 months, 9 months, going into to Royal Rumble and seeing who's the champion and who's going to be the champion going forward, especially now that the briefcase is out of play. So our champion is locked in for now until an actual title defense and a title change happens after a match, because there's not going to obviously be any more surprises. So it's going to be very interesting. But if they do go the route with Cody and The Rock, or Cody and The Rock, Cody and Cena at WrestleMania 41, I think that'd be very interesting as well. I think that would kind of like, I can see some people saying like, you don't need to do that. Cody's already a made man. Like, why not have Cena put someone else over? And I can kind of get that. But man, like, yes, Cody's over and Cody's the man. But I really think that having a good program and a good, almost like that meme or the gif or whatever of Spider-Man looking at Spider-Man, like, and pointing at them at themselves. Cody is slowly or quickly rather becoming the next John Cena in the sense of he's the guy showing up. Well, Cena didn't show up in suits, but he's the company guy. He's the corporate guy. Like he has that appeal. He's the company man going out to all the what is it, the morning shows, and I don't watch that shit. So whatever the name of the show is called, Good Morning America and all that bullshit, all that stuff out there. Like he's the one doing the press. He's staying at late after the shows. Like he's doing the house shows. Like he's the fighting champion, and he is the face of the company right now. As much as maybe some people don't want to say it or say like, oh, like WWE doesn't have a face of the company anymore. Like they just are the face themselves, but as the brand. But Cody's the guy right now. As much as like even if you don't like him, like I can see maybe why you would make more of an argument against it. But and especially, I think Roman, you could say in a lot of ways too, but Roman wasn't as active as Cody. So that's why I'm saying in comparison to Cena, Cody's damn near the closest that we've had since Cena in that regard. So I would love a program and a feud with Cody and Cena. I think that would really be beneficial. Whether I wouldn't advocate for Cena defeating Cody, obviously, like that'd be a whole nother discussion. And I would be actually very upset if Cena would beat Cody for that title. But I could, and that's what I was saying too. I can see them wanting to have a monumental moment for Cena, especially since they know that they're going to have him for a good amount of time. You can pull the trigger at a WrestleMania by having him win the World Heavyweight Championship and then holding on to it for 2-3 months, and then in his last match losing it to whomever they want to really solidify there. Because in the storyline in that regard too is Cena going to retire as champion, or is whomever going to beat him on the way out? Because he's not going to get a rematch, because he promised, and Cena's a man of his word, that once he's done, he's done. And if he declares SummerSlam of 2026 or 2025 rather as his last moment, maybe, or his last match rather, maybe that's the case. So it's going to be really intriguing. And I didn't really intend to devote so much time to Cena there, but it's just kind of my 2 cents of the lay of the land right now. And I will be completely honest too. I was a Cena hater for many, many years. I still am not the biggest fan, but I have grown respect for him in my older years. But yeah, man, it's weird seeing him on his little retirement run or about to start it and obviously announcing it and going to be going on that little retirement tour. Just thinking of all the years I started out really digging Cena. I had a few shirts, I had the wristbands, the chain, all that shit. Like the chain gang, remember that? I had all that shit. And then as I grew up a little bit more, he started getting cheesier and it just like that was in his defense, that was when the whole PG era really took off or took over. Um and he just was playing his part, and he was just doing what he needed to do and what he was told and what the company needed at the time. And you can't fault him for that. And dude made a shit ton of money, but he also gave back a lot too. And I think as a whole, he holds the most what are they, like the wishes? I forget. Make a Wish. Is it the Make a Wish? But he's granted, like, I think the last count that I heard was like over 600, which was the most for any celebrity, period, if I'm not mistaken. So for as much shit period that you can give Cena, and there'll be plenty of time to talk about him within the next year or so. You have to respect the dude, and you have to appreciate what he's done for the business and how he never turned his back on it. There was a lot like The Rock, just to be completely out there, like The Rock when he went into Hollywood at the beginning. Yes, of course then it was a completely different era and the world was different back then too, and not as accepting of wrestling and things like that, and some things that happened prior to. But he separated from WWE, like he in WWF. He created distance. He didn't want to be called The Rock. Like he was Dwayne Johnson, you know what I mean? And again, props to him, and I get it, like I can't say I don't know if I would have gone that strong, but like I I get it, and I get probably why his agent or manager or whatever was like, you need to, yes, The Rock kind of brought you to that table, but now Dwayne Johnson needs to be the head of the table, to bring into wrestling. And I get that. And from a business perspective and a brand perspective, in the long run, it ended up helping wrestling and actually ended up coming full circle. It was kind of like probably one of those, I'm not really good with analogies right now, but you needed to kind of leave to come back type shit. So he did that. And now he's Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and it's the best of both worlds. And he's really amplified. Yes, WWE got hot on its own, and he came in and he did amplify it as well. But like, it's just a perfect storm right now. So that's kind of my long story short there with John Cena and how it could potentially tie into everything. But getting back to the show itself here, and the next matchup on the card was the Damian Priest versus Seth Rollins match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Of course, Damian Priest is your champion going into it. But prior to that, we did have a little backstage segment. We had Damian Priest shown in the back in the little Judgment Day area. Finn Balor told him it was time to punish Seth Rollins, and Priest looked at Balor, Mysterio, JD, and Carlito and told them not to get involved in his match no matter what happens. Once Priest left, Balor, he just completely changed, and he was like, "Whatever you want, boss." I just had to look to him like, "Okay, yeah, like okay." And then right after that, we got well, of course, it was the video package, but then we had a update from Michael Cole that said Drew McIntyre tweeted, "I told you, remember what I said," and that was in reference, most likely, to him saying that if he won the Money in the Bank briefcase, he was going to cash in later that night on the heavyweight championship match, or at least cash in later on that night. The beginning of the match happens, and it's just Rollins and Damian Priest. They're going back and forth. Honestly, I didn't think it was that bad starting off. I didn't think it was that terrible. Yeah, I guess a few clunky moments, whatever. And it wasn't the smoothest match, but excuse me, some people were really shitting. I don't think it was that bad. There was a moment, obviously, which everyone was talking about, when Rollins hit the Falcon Arrow and Damian Priest did not kick out, and the referee stopped that too and acted like he kicked out. Triple H touched on it. I believe it was Chris Van Vliet asked him in the press conference, and Triple H pretty much praised Priest the entire time and said, "Look, shit happens essentially. But he gets that if it was Triple H the wrestler, like he would, I forget exactly what he said, but he would reference, and uh, he would have a serious conversation with the referee, and be like, you know, what happened." But it just kind of shit happens, and he just really emphasized and put over how much Damian Priest has changed and how much he's grown and how strong of a champion that he's been, and how now when you look at him you do see a champion, and how great of shape he's in, and just the different vibe that he gives off, and then the different presence that he brings now. So Triple H didn't seem to be that concerned about it. And he did reference, you know, like if he knows Damian Priest, he's going to be beating himself up about it, something to that effect. But look, man, shit happens, you know? Like, I don't know why people are getting so mad about her. Like, oh, like, it just shows how much he sucks. Like, dude is the veteran. Like, Damian Priest has been doing this for years. Like, he going back to, like, Punishment Martinez. And there's apparently going to be a documentary that WWE is putting out. I believe that it was slated for August 1st. It was like a kind of like a spotlight on Damian Priest, I think. I think it was the WWE 24. So I'm very intrigued and I'm very excited to watch that. And I hope a lot of fans watch that and realize where he's come from and the work that he's put into it and his story. Again, I don't even know his full story myself, and that's why I'm very excited to watch it. But just from what I do know and what I've seen, and I've been to those ROH shows when there was just like 100 people, 200 people there, and he, you know, was just going out there doing his thing. So it's very cool to see him really, I'm not gonna say thrive as a champion because that would be a little too strong, even as much as I'm trying to give him his credit as well. But I think that it's a combination of things right now, and the story isn't really focused on him. It's been everything surrounding him. So I think, but I do think them keeping the title on him and them being so supportive of him, that's a sign as well. And it's gonna be very interesting what they do with him and Gunther at SummerSlam. That's going to be the real test. I'm not going to get any thoughts or predictions there because we're going to be going long. And that's, you know, we'll do a separate show for that. Maybe even have a special guest on to do a prediction show. But that, of course, was all changed when we had the Son of the Sword and Drew McIntyre made his way out. Drew came in the ring, and before he could even really do much, I think he hit a couple moves. CM Punk just fucking came into the ring and just wailed on him and just fucking beat the shit out of him. He brought him out to the ring, and because of course at this time now, and now that it's a triple threat match, there's no disqualification. So he was able to get Drew outside to the ring. Of course, just started wailing on him with some chairs. Just brutal. It was really brutal, to be honest with you. Like, I was actually pretty surprised by the anger that CM Punk was showing, and the fact that he was just really fucking hitting him. I mean, obviously, you know, not actually hitting him, but this shit looked brutal. Is what I'm trying to say. And I appreciate the beating that Drew took. And it's gonna be that's, I think, a good sign. And I think Bad Blood is a very good pay-per-view for Drew and CM Punk to have their first match back. Yes, obviously, SummerSlam is a bigger deal. And maybe Bad Blood will be like round two because this is definitely not ending in a one match thing for either side. Um, but man, I think I can't wait for Punt to come back. He did mention in his press conference as well that he's pretty much, it's a matter of he feels he's ready. He's pretty sure that he's ready to come back physically, mentally, like emotionally, can come back ready to go. But WWE and the doctors are protecting him from himself, type thing. And he wishes that was the case 10 years ago. Because like, we're not going to go back there, you know, we're not going to rehash that type shit. Which I just love. He's just fucking great. He did have, I think it was some donuts there, and he got to have pastries now. I just fucking love him. I just love, I love the pettiness. I love how he's a jerk. I love everything about him. So clearly, if it's not obvious, but I will say, and what I was referencing at the beginning of the show, I am kind of tired of Punk costing Drew, but I get it though. You know, I get it. Drew beat the shit out of Punk, made him bleed, took his bracelet, all that shit. I get it, and not saying it's not deserved, but now it's just like it kind of I didn't like it in this particular situation just because it made Drew look dumb. And what I've been really loving about this feud is how Drew has really looked like a badass heel and a smart heel at that too. Where and at the same token too, and on the flip side, Punk isn't made to look like a dumb or stupid babyface, and they're just both on level playing fields in that regard. Drew's a badass, strong heel, and Punk is a badass, strong babyface. And especially when Punk comes back full time or whatever, his status, full part time ish, whatever that looks like. We're gonna get more and more out of that, and I think the way it's been set up now, and it was almost again a blessing in disguise that Punk got hurt because it's kind of I love that Punk is coming in and just they're going back and forth, and you never know when to expect Punk. You kind of know when to expect Punk. You never know exactly when it's going to happen. But I didn't like this, like I was saying, because it really made Drew look dumb. It made Drew look like an idiot for not only announcing it days before, saying, "Yeah, if I win the briefcase, I'm going to cash in that night." And then tweeting about it the same night, be like, "Hey," pretty much like a "Hey, reminder, this is where I'm going to be at this time." So it's like, yeah, if I'm Punk and Drew did to me what he did to me in my hometown, fuck yeah, I'm going to beat the shit out of it, and I'm going to ruin his moment again. And I don't knock it in that regard, but I knock it in the sense like, man, like Drew, like what the fuck, like, and maybe he's gonna reference that on Raw tonight that he's gonna say, yeah, it was I realized the error in my ways type shit. You know what I mean? And I don't think it was like a make or break for the story or anything like that, but it's just like, okay, like I want that to be it. Like if Drew is ever able to somehow get another match, another title shot rather, in the near future before Punk is brought back officially I'm just gonna say on a full time basis, um, I don't want Punk to interfere anymore. I get why he is. Like, I'm not hating on I enjoy that and I like that. And I like them just continually doing this. And it's been keeping Punk involved even while he's been out. It's not overexposing him, but it's not underexposing him either. I think it's been the perfect amount. And I love everything that they've done up to it. But I think last night for me, it was just like, man, like I would have loved for Drew to come out, tease like he was gonna cash in the briefcase, and then like point to his head and be like, I'm out, like I like go to cash in and then have Punk come out and then Drew not officially cash in. The bell doesn't ring, because obviously they restart the match and start a new match once the briefcase is officially cashed in, and have Punk or Drew just wail Punk, or even if you don't want them to make contact, have Punk about to be jumping over the barricade and then Drew turning around even from a distance and kind of doing that like I outsmart you type shit. And then Punk being like just enraged, and then that's when your security guards can run in and just keep the two apart. They can somehow get them escorted to the back, and then that can kind of like sort itself out. And then we obviously will get backstage footage, and they can air that on Twitter, their YouTube, whatever. But then Damian and Seth continue their match, and it still can work out the same way. I think you can still have Seth being pissed at Punk and still have Seth react the way to Punk that he did, because if that's how you want it, and that obviously actually backtracking, if you still want Seth to have that reaction to Punk and that be a pivotal moment for their future feud going forward after, Punk and Drew take care of themselves, and that could be another just something for the story of Rollins and Punk to reference. You can have Damian Priest capitalize on the distraction between Drew and Punk, hit the South of Heaven chokeslam, and get the 1-2-3 on Seth. Seth, be disheveled and be like, kind of like, what the fuck happened? Again, not immediately pop up, but take a minute or two. And then as Punk is being dragged, because Drew's already taken to the back first by the security guards, then you have Punk kind of like turning around to see what the hell happened, because he hears the ring bell being hit, and then Damian Priest's music going off, and then he turns around to see what's going on, and then Seth is looking back at him and has the same reaction, like, I hate you, motherfucker type shit, So I think you still could have gotten to the same point going a different route is my thing. And I think that you still could have had Drew going out there and living up to what he was saying, but at the same token too, like kind of like he was setting a trap for Punk and outsmarting Punk, but not truly outsmarting Punk, because yes, he lured Punk in, but it's not like he like beat Punk down again, or like he got the upper hand physically on Punk. So that's just kind of how I would have done it. I let me know what you guys think. If you would have done anything differently, or if you like the way it played out. But to me, even as a huge CM Punk fan myself, like it was just one too many times where it was predictable, but then it's like, okay, like too predictable in that regard. It's like, okay, like you're kind of hurting Damian Priest in the same realm as well. So, and a lot of people were referencing that Damian Priest looked visibly upset in that after the match, after he got the 3 count, and that was probably in reference to the ending of or the mistake that he made in the match. But I think it was him being his character being pissed off that there was another interference in his match, another, like, whether it was a cash in or an interference or something like that, there was an outside party getting involved and he can't get a clean victory. So that's where I think like the frustration was coming from visibly on Damian Priest's character wise. We'll be able to see obviously the follow up for that tonight, which I'm very excited for. I don't know if we're gonna get Punk tonight, so we'll see about that. But I didn't hate the match as much as a lot of people. I'm not gonna say some people hated it, but a lot of people were just shitting on it. So again, it wasn't a great match, but to me, and I definitely, like I just explained for I don't even know how long, I would have done things differently. But yeah, to me it just wasn't terrible, even with the clunky moves in there. It wasn't their best match, but it wasn't, to me, it wasn't terrible. But that leads us to our main event. We had the women's money. Oh, I'm sorry, not our main event. The second to the last match on the show. We had our women's Money in the Bank match. The competitors were Io Sky, Chelsea Green, your hometown girl, Lyra Valkyria. Lyra Valkyria. I was like, what the fuck? What did I just create? Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, and Zoe Stark. This again was, it started off really scary. To be honest with you guys, I was kind of watching between my fingers type thing. But this ended up being a banger. It was one of those, I think they just needed to kind of like knock out some kinks and maybe get over some nerves or anxiety or whatever it is, and then just kind of get going, you know? Like, it's, to me, it's like a basketball player that starts off really shitty in the first round, or not the first round, the first quarter, and then just comes back and just fucking kills it for the remaining part of the game. So I think that's what this was. I'm gonna not be too extensive here because obviously, you know, we're running a little bit long, but props and shout out to all the girls and the women involved here. I think they fucking killed it. I hope that they all are giving themselves praise and not beating themselves up backstage for whatever little things happen. Because they fucking killed, I wouldn't say the majority of everything that they executed and they set out to do. And I think the ending moment with Tiffany Stratton pushing Chelsea Green off of the top of the ladder, because the story throughout the match was how terrified Chelsea Green was of heights, right? And the ending was just so beautifully told, how Chelsea finally made it to the top. She was just about to take the briefcase off the hinge, and then Tiffany Stratton comes up from the other side, starts shaking the ladder, which, again, in most situations, is like, why wouldn't you just grab the briefcase though? But it makes sense because Chelsea Green is terrified. So any movement, the first thing she's going to do is like clutch for safety because she's already terrified, and that just makes it 10 times worse, right? Tiffany makes her way to the other ladder that's right beside it. I don't remember if they punch each other or not, but ultimately Tiffany Stratton ends up pushing Chelsea from the top of the ladder in the center of the ring towards the outside on the floor. They had set up 2 tables. I believe actually they both set those up together, if I'm not mistaken, which is ironic now as well. And just Chelsea took the most beautiful crash through the 2 tables that were set up on the ringside area. She hit the center of the table, like just back first. Like, it was just beautiful. So all the props in the world to Chelsea Green and to Tiffany Stratton as well. I just think that so many things could go wrong with that, whether you're male or female. And just how they executed that and just the result of it was just so beautiful. And yes, if I would have done a prediction show, you guys would have heard that I would have predicted that Chelsea was going to win. I really still wish you would have. That would be the other match on the show that I was kind of like, okay, like, I get it, but I would have gone a different route. I still would have gone Chelsea Green here, but and maybe even flip the roles, have Tiffany take that big bump again, put another notch under Tiffany's belt of just the respect and the love that people are and the fans are building for her, and just have another reason for us to. So I'm not gonna hate on it, but I don't think Tiffany's gonna cash in anytime soon. I think we're gonna get a match between her and Trish Stratus probably at SummerSlam, and then she'll focus on the Money in the Bank briefcase, because she even referenced in her press conference interview that she was asked by a reporter, would she cash in potentially on Nia Jax if Nia ends up winning at SummerSlam, And of course, we know that they've kind of been building their relationship there. And I think she said it was a really good question, and they like we'd have to tune into SmackDown and see, or I don't remember her exact answer, but I didn't get the vibe that she necessarily would. So I think it's going to be a while before we see any type of like briefcase attempts for Tiffany. But of course, now we're leading off to the main event. We had the Bloodline, which is Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Tama Tonga, facing off against WWE Champion Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens in a 6-man tag match. Right before the match started, there was a huge "We Want Roman" chant, and then there was also "Fuck You Solo" chant, so that was pretty cool as well. And it was just so great not to have the shit censored, man. Like, it's just terrible. We're not going long, guys, so I'm not gonna get into this one because it was pretty much what you expect. Honestly, though, I do want to reference my favorite moment in the match, which is when Randy Orton, I forget what he calls it, but it's the draping DDT that he does. He hit that on Jacob Fatu, and obviously Fatu, it's the what it sounds like, a draping DDT. Your feet are on the middle rope. You get hit, just spike down for the DDT. But if you know anything about Samoans, you don't either headbutt them. You don't really impact their head because they have a hard head. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you guys have a hard head. It's just that's what we've been told, right? So if you know your history, uh, you know not to do anything like that, or not to be too confident that you've done much damage. So Jacob was kind of like wobbly at first, but he kind of shook it off, and while Randy Orton was just like gluing to the fans, he was facing the other side. Jacob stood up. So, it, just probably the moment of the match for me personally, to be honest with you guys. As Jacob stands up, Randy, if you've seen Randy Orton matches, which I know you have if you're watching this channel, he was turning to strike, pretty much start his little like moment where he's like, what is it called? Like when he's like gearing up and he strikes on the mat and he slams his forearms down and he's pretty much getting ready to hit the RKO. He turns around and he goes to hit that, and then he looks down, so he's laying on the ground on his forearms, and he looks forward where he's expecting to see Jacob Fatu laying on the mat, and he's pretty much seeing feet, and he slowly brings his view up, and Jacob is standing there. And it was just so well done. Just so well done. So I just had to call that out. I'm sure other people have mentioned it as well. I haven't really listened to any review shows yet. Just again, been crazy couple days, but I think that moment was just so beautifully told. And then the ending of the match is what we all expected and what it needed to be. Solo Sikoa getting the victory after hitting the spike on Cody. Nothing surprising there, to be honest. It sets up the match that we all expected between Solo and Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Whether SummerSlam is going to be the actual return of Roman Reigns and if it's going to be Roman costing Solo, and ironically helping Cody retain, that is to be determined, and we'll see the lay of the land going forward. Part of me wonders still if it's still too soon to bring Roman back, but maybe it's exactly what you need. But I don't know. I'm not going to get into that again because we've obviously again gone long, and I want to do a little bit more thinking and just see a little bit more content before we kind of get closer to SummerSlam. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show. I truly appreciate it. We'll be back not too long. Probably maybe towards the end of this week. Take a look at AEW and whatever else is happening in the world of wrestling, because there's always shit happening. But like I said, as always, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show. I truly appreciate it. You already know where to follow me, so I'm not gonna go through that again. But stay safe, guys, and just enjoy some wrestling and enjoy Raw tonight. I have a feeling it's gonna be a good show. So take care, guys. Until next time.